Hello, welcome to this Rhino tutorial, and we're going to be looking at solids. So we've touched on solids in previous videos. We've been using this access here, which gives us access to the primitives, but if we go onto the solid tools tab, you see all those again. There's also a solids drop down where you see the same tools repeated. So there's a few ways of getting at solid tools, but let's just talk about what solids are to start with. This is a repeat from a previous video, so I've made a cube using this solid primitive here. Now at the moment, if I select that, closed extrusion, so closed being the key word there, closed means solid. But if I explode that, you see it says 6 open surfaces in the properties now. So that's no longer a closed shape because they might be touching one another and adjacent to one another, but they're not joined together. So if I move this out, you'll see that a solid is just a series of surfaces that are joined together to make a closed shape. So I can make this back into a closed shape if I select that, start typing move, and I snap that back to itself. I will then select it all and hit join, and it's now a closed polysurface. Okay, so there are a few solids in here. There are spheres, there are toruses, there are ellipsoids. One of the things we can look at here is when you're working in solids, you have these options here which are called Boolean, and you can join things together, you can split them, and we'll look at that in a moment. But one more thing before we do that, if I create a shape on the floor and I make sure it's closed, so just to check that I'm going to select it, and in properties it says closed curve. So if that didn't say closed, extruding it wouldn't be able to create a solid, and that's what I'm going to do. First I'm going to extrude this, so EXTR, I'm going to start typing that, and that gives me the extrude curve tool. Select it and then start moving up. Now at the moment you see in the options it says solid no, so if I was to create that, it's not going to be solid, it's just a surface. It says open extrusion. Now I could type cap, we covered this in the previous video, and now it's a closed polysurface. But instead of having to do those two steps, if I extrude this curve again, but in this time I hit solid yes, it will make a closed solid shape. So when you're extruding polylines, make sure that they're a closed curve to start with, and then when you're extruding, if you use this solid option, it will automatically cap the ends for you. Okay, let's look at Boolean. So on my solids toolbar, they're up in this corner here, and we can do a few things here. So let's take this sphere and let's just take a copy, alt move of that. So I'm going to push these things together. So if we look at that, at the moment you can see that I've got one solid shape and another solid shape together. If I change the view to X-ray, you can see that the geometry is still there, it's inside the cube. Okay, back to shaded. So Boolean union's the most basic one here, where you select it and it says select surfaces or polysurfaces to union. We'll go that one and that one, hit enter. Now that has got rid of the internal geometry, as you can see there. So that's now seen as one object, and if I select it, it says closed polysurface, and I select both objects. Okay, let's take this, let's take another copy of it. Now let's take this ovoid and push that into the space. So again, the two are sharing the same space, but they're not joined together. So what can I do here? If next one over, Boolean difference, if I select that, select the surface to subtract from. Okay, we'll take the cube, press enter, and then it says select the surface to subtract. It's got delete input yes as default, and you see what happens there. One solid takes a bite out of the other solid. Let's see what this next one is. Boolean intersection. So let's take this, I'm going to copy it again over to here. So we'll do Boolean intersection next. Select the first set of objects, that one, second set of objects, that one. Now see what happened there. Where the two were intersecting, I've now got a unique shape. So that can be a very powerful tool for you. Now the split is the next one. I'm going to undo what I just did then. So let's use Boolean split. Select that one. Select that one. It doesn't look like it's done anything, but then when we move it apart, you see I have three objects. Okay, next thing to look at is what we can do with solid objects. So let's take this cube. In fact, let's select everything, and by holding Control I can deselect one of the cubes, hit delete. So we're back to there. Okay, under solids, if we drop down, there are quite a lot of options that we can do to it. We can fillet its edge and we can chamfer its edge. So let's just work through those. Fillet edge, the radius is 2 mil at the moment. Let's make that 5. And I'm going to say that one, that one, and that one. So I'm selecting the edges and I get a little preview of what it's going to look like. So that's filleted those off. If I go to there again and go to chamfer edge, change the distance to 5 as it was before, and go around those, and you'll see I get a 45-degree angle chamfer on there. So that works with solids. Okay, let's look at scaling. So if I start typing scale, you'll see I get scale, scale 1D, scale 2D. Let's look at scale 1D to start with. Select this object, happy with my selection, so I enter. I'm going to pick a corner for its origin point, so this is where it's going to scale from. I'm going to grab the other end, and that allows me to stretch out in that direction. So I can do the same again in all three directions. So scaling 1D, scaling one direction. Scale again, start typing it, but this time I'm going to go scale, and this is scaling in 3 dimensions. So select the object, pick the same origin point. Now I could do the same again here, and notice the whole thing is scaling up in whatever size I want, or I could do the same again, but I could, instead of picking a reference point, I could give it a scale factor. So I could say I want it twice as big, so enter 2, and it will get to twice as big. So that's using scale from the command line. If you use Gumball, when you select an object, you get these scale grabs automatically with the Gumball tool. So that's a one directional or 1D scale, or if I hold shift I get a 3-dimensional scale. But notice, instead of it being around an origin point, it's around that center point there. If I did want to scale from that point there, you can change where the gumball is for this object by holding Control, clicking on that central node, and then dragging it to where you want it to be. So now I would be scaling from that corner point. There are a few other useful solids which I want to show you, and let's say this one here, pipe with round caps. Now this is a great way of quickly getting a three-dimensional tube shape. You can use with flat caps or flat ends, or they can be rounded ends depending on what you're trying to build. Now this relies on having a curve in to start with, so let's put a curve on the floor there, and let's use the curved ends. So it says select curve, and it automatically starts you on a pipe shape, a circle shaped profile that lives on that curve. So I'm just going to randomly click a size. Now notice it's gone to the other end. If I hit enter, I will get the same size as that end, and I'm doing the same again. If I hit enter, I get the same kind of thing, but I also can go bigger, and again if I hit enter it remembers that bigger dimension. So I can do that. When I'm happy doing that, hit enter, and you see it's got rounded ends. It's interpolated between these profiles to create this shape. If I select it, check my properties, closed polysurface, so it's a solid. So let's try that again, put another curve in. Well, let's just use this other tool here with flat ends. Select the object. Now I'm going to just keep this straight, so I'm just going to hit enter so it picks up that same radius as the first one, and then I'm going to hit enter again, and I just get a straight tube with the capped ends. So that is a useful tool. There are lots of things you can do with solids. It's a good place to start actually. When you've got a solid like this, for instance, if I type bend, select the object, I'm going to go into top view for this one actually, and I'm going to turn off my snaps. I'm just going to do this by eye. I can grab a part of that and bend it around. From the side I could do the same, so I'm hitting space bar to get bend going again. I'm going to select the object, but this time I'm going to come in from the side, and I'm going to say from there to there, and I'm going to bend it up in that direction. So you can start with a simple solid shape and then start bending it. You can do twist as well. Select the object to twist, start axis of twist there, end there, angle there, and it starts twisting around. If you see, let me make this bigger. If you see, I am twisting it around that axis, and the more I do it, the more it twists. So okay, so that's some of the things you can do with solids. Well, I hope that was informative. Thank you very much.